as I come in, and I'm going to set a little bit of a challenge, which is I was here about an hour ago when a guy from Qualcomm, Dr. Anthony Thompson, was here specifically to talk about innovation. And it was innovation around the vehicle platform and around technology and how the infrastructure might need to change around that platform. And there was probably about a third as many people here. And I think that actually reflects one of the real challenges for our industry, which is, are we focused enough on what's coming in 5 years and 10 years, those innovations that will affect and impact all of our industry? Or are we a little bit concerned around what the next contract is and what's happening in kind of the next 2 or 3 years? And I think I'd just like just to reflect on that as I talk about our supply chain strategy and the direction, because it's really, really important that we change the balance of where we're spending our time and our attention, I think, as an industry. Okay then, with that as an opening, I'm going to move on. Just to set the business context, as you know, we're here as Highways England today, and it's been quite a journey to create that new business, to transition from Highways Agency, part of the Department for Transport. We're very much set a new challenge in terms of the capital programme, in terms of getting through the deliverables and improving the performance and the customer service standard that's expected of us. That's a real challenge for this business, and it's growing and it's changing. And I know that those of you that deal with us on a day-to-day basis will be very aware of what that feels like. Our growing pains as we transition will be visible to you, and you will see that. But it's really important that A, we get through that journey, and B, as we transition, we build deeper and more productive relationships. The performance aspirations for our network cannot be achieved unless those relationships grow and change. So that's what I'm going to focus on a little for the rest of this presentation. So returning to the theme of supply chain strategy, we published this at the end of September. There's 3 key principles that run through that. And I'm just going to ask Dave O'Neill just to raise his hand here. If you've got any queries, then please grab myself or Dave O'Neill a bit later on. Dave very much was one of the authors of this and has really lived this as we've developed it in terms of the thinking. So it's about building capability, it's about developing relationships, and it's about really delivering performance, but recognizing the order that you have to develop those things in. You can't start at the end, it doesn't work. The structure of that strategy, there's 3 separate elements. On the left-hand side, the strategy itself is it starts at what the outcomes the business needs to deliver are. It talks about building capability, developing relationships, and delivering performance. We've then, because this is quite a big, complex business and quite a big, complex set of supply chains that we have, we've then broken it down into value chain plans. And these are really focused on driving into the detail of the areas of the business that you guys know much, much better than we do, and about providing an opportunity for innovation and collaboration and the relationships to develop properly in those areas, rather than applying a broad brush approach across the top. The second area in that green block is procurement plans. For as long as I've been with this business, industry has been talking to us about the need for better visibility of pipeline, better stability of that future pipeline. Part of that is achieving the Roads Investment Strategy investment and securing that investment over the 5-year period. But part of that is us breaking that down and being clear with industry, firstly, what we've procured already, next, what the pipeline is, the immediate pipeline, and thirdly, where the longer term is coming from. So the procurement plan breaks that down and provides that overview and that visibility for you. And then finally, we'll get into much more detail around the investment delivery plans, and that's the thing that brings it to life in terms of what the industry, how we will go to market, how we as a business will deliver. So to supply chain strategy, I'm going to talk a little bit about routes to implementation. There's more than one axis on this chart. On the vertical axis, talking about building capability. On the horizontal axis, about delivering performance. But the diagonal and is the most important one. That's about developing the right relationships. It's about changing the way the industry works so that we are spending much, much less time arguing about compensation events and rates and whether or not this particular contract clause has an S in it or not. And we're actually focused on delivering innovation in how we deliver our business. There is far, far more value in those conversations than there is in some of the ones that we're having at the moment, which are overly contractual and not really driving forward the business. So we're working very, very hard in making sure that we do all three of those things. On the capability access, there was quite a lot of debate yesterday, in particular around the skills agenda. And I think this is an area where, as an industry, we have to make sure that we're much more organised and much more focused than we have been previously. We have a great challenge in this area in terms of capacity and capability. We have to make sure we have a coherent approach to that we're drawing in the right talent, the best graduates, the best apprentices, and we're giving them structured training programs that set them off correctly into good careers in our industry. If we don't do that, very quickly we are going to run out of capacity to deliver this long-term investment agenda. And I think we need to do that in a much more coordinated way. We will change our procurement processes to make sure that we encourage that behaviour, and we can encourage and facilitate that. But I think I was slightly unnerved by some of the comments yesterday that appeared to not take responsibility, take seriously the responsibility of industry in running your businesses to deliver that and actually look at the future needs of your businesses. We can make sure that the framework's there and make sure you're not disincentivized for doing that, but we can't run everybody's business in the industry. You know your business is much better than we do. On the bottom axis, around delivering performance, I think we've made great strides actually over the last few years in terms of being much more coherent about what we value as a business and about making sure we express simply and clearly and are much more transparent about what we value in terms of contract performance. So hopefully you're seeing a coherent message from us. And in terms of the developing relationship aspect, I'll come on to some of the more structured work that we are doing. But hopefully you're seeing a change in tone of voice from us as a business. You're seeing more open dialogue. You're seeing less defensive, standing behind the public procurement regulations, and a much more appetite to enter into a good dialogue and potentially change some things, take a little bit more risk around some of those conversations. That's where we want to end up. Another aspect of that is very much changing the way that we look at our whole industry. When I joined the business about 7 years ago from aerospace, I was very, very surprised that the business appeared to concentrate on tier one relationships almost exclusively. And when you looked for information or contacts or innovation from lower tiers in the supply chain, actually the visibility was really very low. We've tried to change that. A number of things over the last few years. Certainly category management has helped us really understand some of those sub-tiers. But, and I kind of take the hit on this, we focused initially on a cost basis. We looked at where the money was going, and that was partly because of the Spending Review 10 and the settlement and what we needed to achieve in that. But we focused on cost. And I think where we need to transition to is really looking at this through the customer's eyes and looking at where the value is. What is it that customers value? What is it that our government sponsors value in our performance objectives? And which parts of the supply chain do we really need to form strong and good relationships with in order to deliver that value? So a great example of this, one of the things that if you look at the Highways England post bag, white lines, road markings, is a really big issue for the public. I spent a Friday evening on the customer contact centre on the phone lines just a couple of weeks ago, and we had 2 calls just in the space of an hour about people saying white road markings, why aren't they up to standard? So when we look at our supply chain through a value perspective, that's something that our customers really value. They like the white lines to be clear. They like the cat's eyes to be there and visible. But when you look at our supply chain through a cost perspective, the cost of those elements versus drainage or pavements or safety barriers is much, much smaller. And therefore, previously, the way that we've looked at our supply chains has maybe pointed us in the wrong direction and focused us on the wrong things. One of the changes that you'll see as we roll out this supply chain strategy is that we try to become much, much more focused on where the real value is for our customers and ourselves and all of you too. So building relationships, I've talked a little bit about this, and you will be aware that we have a very large and complicated supply chain. And you can't manage all of that supply chain in the same way. We have to put some order and some structure into that. So just looking at these two axes, complexity of delivery from low to high and complexity of investment outcomes from low to high, there is a big difference. So we buy kind of electricity and photocopy paper, the same as all of your businesses do. That's low on both of these axes, and we will be having product relationships in terms of that end of the market very clearly. However, in the centre, when we've got more complexity in the delivery outcomes and more complexity in the investment outcomes, we need to form really deep collaborative relationships with you guys to make sure that we have aligned objectives and we're really bringing the best out of your businesses and your supply chains in terms of our performance objectives ourselves. And then at the far right-hand side, we will still continue to have some really deep partner-level relationships, DBFO relationships, PFI relationships. These are structured on a very different basis, and we need to make sure that we don't confuse them and we use them effectively, but we also don't detract from the real core of our business, which is around the collaborative relationships in the centre of this diagram. Okay, so I talked a little bit about value chain plans, and you're probably wondering what on earth we're talking about. As I said, we've tried to break this down into a number of steps. The start is business need. Like, what is it that we value? What is it that the Department for Transport values? What is it that our customer really values? And how do we bring more of that into play? So we then looked at the capability in the market, the supply chain that you're all part of. And what is it in that chain of relationships that really, really brings value? And are we getting enough of it? And that's what takes us to the value chain plans. What needs to be different and what needs to be better in the future? What do we need to change? And we need to be much more specific about what these things are and much more focused about how we change our relationships, who we have relationships with, what we incentivize in those relationships, how we compete them, because there will be an element of competition, and make sure that we bring more of the value through that you guys can deliver. The way that we're going to structure that is over on the right-hand side. So we've tried to break our business down, not in the traditional way that we would to by tiers of relationships, but actually in terms of the things that our customers see that deliver value. So there's a grouping of 10 there. Smart motorways, regional investment, complex infrastructure, around the modernised part of our objectives, around maintain, renewal of pavement structures, routine maintenance, and then technology. And then on the operate side, we'll actually do one value chain for this because we recognise the real integration on the technology side of the business around customer information, control rooms, and on-road technology. And our thinking has been, as you might expect, moving around on this. Initially, we thought we would have 3 value chains in this area, but actually when we come to get it into the detail, they are so integrated that we'll pull that together into one area. And as we do that, we intend to do this in a very collaborative way. I know that we've had great support from industry already. Many of you will be looking at the slides thinking this is all very familiar. And I think that's a really good place for us to be because we've shaped this and honed it on the basis of lots of industry input. So we welcome that. In terms of establishing leadership and our position around this, 2 new forums that we've established. One of them is an engagement council. And this has really moved on from the principals group that we used to run a few years ago around the Major Projects Programme. The Engagement Council covers a very broad cross-spectrum of our supply chain, across major projects, around maintenance and renewals, across technology, and also some of the key sub-tier relationships that we have, delivering key parts of our value chains. And that group covers about 70 or 80 suppliers. Last time we met, we had about 120 people from the supply chain there, and some really good conversations taking place, focused on the deliverables that we as an industry need to deliver on strategic road network. Quite spiky conversations, some of them, and quite a lot of challenge, and I'm really, really encouraged that, because as an industry, we are only going to get better if all of our supply chain partners feel that it's okay to challenge, it's okay to move us on as a business. Sitting alongside that is a collaboration board. There's lots of ideas generated in the Engagement Council, lots of ideas for how we could change, but we need to bring a little bit of structure and prioritisation to that, and that's what the collaboration board is there to do. It's elected representatives from the Engagement Council representing all the parts of our supply chain. We've got 3 or 4 of the Highways England execs sitting on there, and that group really makes decisions about how we spend money, what we prioritise, and how we shape our approach. So we're very much trying to become much more of a listening organisation, but as you might expect, because it's big, we need to do that in a structured way, and these are 2 of the key forums that we're aiming to use in doing that. Just changing subject slightly a little bit, pipeline visibility. I did mention this earlier in terms of the procurement plan, and as I said, it's broken down into 3 sections. Sharon Cuff, Sharon just raised her hand there. If you've got any queries on this, Sharon is very much the author of this and has converted our procurement programme that we have at the moment into something that we shared with industry as a draft, and we said, is this what you want? We had quite a lot of feedback that said not quite. So we've shaped it, and the next generation will be slightly different too, getting much clearer, much nearer what industry is saying that you need from us. So section 1 is the committed spend. That's the schemes already awarded as part of the RIS1 programme. Section 2 is looking at future spend, where we already know the route to market, whether that's through CDF, the maintenance and renewals arrangements, or through our category management arrangements. That is all set out. And then section 3 is the future spend. It gives visibility of when we will go to market and makes it clear what routes to market we're considering, but where we haven't actually decided as yet. It's as good as information as we have, and we're going to keep it fresh. We intend to issue an update of this around January timeframe. That will reflect any changes that came out of the autumn statement yesterday. They need to be processed by the business in terms of phasing, and then worked into the procurement plan, and we think we'll be ready to publish that in about January. And as I say, that will reflect the feedback we've had from industry about usefulness of the format that we've used. In terms of route to market, we've identified about 55% of the RIS now has identified routes to market, and we have the high-level timetable for the balance set out. All of that is available. We've tried to communicate it and make it available as far as possible. So if you just go to the Highways website, there's a link off the front page that takes you right there for the strategy and the procurement pipeline. So just to summarise, I just want to leave with one takeaway message. I talked about relationships and what we need to do to develop those in order to deliver more capability and better performance. But in terms of what we're doing now, I just want to set it in terms of a broader context, because actually what we're doing right now is only part of the journey. And in my view, that sets us up for the future relationships and the future way that we're going to structure our industry going forward. So at the bottom part of this graph, we've got CDF, the framework that we're currently managing. And I believe we're on a journey of maturing 2 things in parallel. We're maturing our relationships at the vertical axis, and we're also maturing our contract models so that they reflect much less a transactional relationship and much more a proper relationship between businesses that's focused on the performance needs of the whole supply chain. what my ambition and my job to do is to make sure that we mature both of these things at the same time, and we take steps up that diagonal line that means that all of us can transition through, to take that transition in a way that manages risk and delivers performance. If we change our contract model before our relationships have matured, ultimately our relationship maturity will constrain what we can do, and vice versa too. We need to do both of these things in parallel. So I believe we're on a journey that's taken us up that diagonal line. I think it's essential that we engage with all of our supply chain to change those relationships, because it's much, much easier for us within the Highways England to change the contractual model and know what we've done on that than it is to change the relationships and be confident that they've changed too. So we need to hear that feedback to make sure we're not out of balance, that we are travelling up that diagonal line. And that will then give us space to do whatever comes after CDF in terms of our market engagement in a much, much more collaborative way. And then what comes beyond that, again, taking a next step change. And I think it's important to set that as a context, so that the work that you see us doing through the Engagement Council and the Collaboration Board now is seen by you guys as a necessary investment and a useful investment in giving us the right relationships for the future. That's it. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.